All right, let's do this. Welcome, everyone, back to another exciting edition of the Uper Farmer Cigar Garage Talk. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you're here to join me, hear my ramblings, stories, fun little facts. For tonight, we are actually smoking a mystery cigar. Came inside a multi-pack, variety pack. No label, no indication of where it came from. It's probably a factory overrun. It's got a couple of veins in it, so it's not the premier cigars. Not bad, though. A little bit of spice to it. I'm actually kind of enjoying it. And there's a very fitting reason, actually, to have a kind of a no-name cigar for tonight's topic. And for the drink, again, still in that Exis 90 kick, a dark beer or a cider would be better, but it's water with just a little bit of juice to change the flavor. Not too much, though. Delicious. So tonight, we're going to talk about self-sufficiency. I am actually a huge fan of self-sufficiency. I have to admit that that is one of my, dreams, goals, passions, is to one day get my little homestead self-sufficient. We produce all the food we need, all the heat we need, all the power we need, right on site. Now, how did this all get started? It's kind of a weird thing to say you want to be in a self-sufficient life. You want to abandon many of the quote-unquote modern conveniences. Stuff like going to buy groceries, the magic of the grocery store. You buy food and look, more food appears. It's magic. It's considered kind of, in some groups, to actually be almost a threat to the American way. Even though we all started off, someone in our ancestral line had to be self-sufficient. That was just the way of things. This modern way of living, it really hasn't been around that long. It's, in my opinion, more of an experiment than anything. So how I got into it actually was as a child. My dad and a good friend of his tried to strive to become more self-sufficient, to run self-sufficient farms. Even one of my earlier videos, I did talk about that. I see myself more as a self-sufficient person than I do a prepper. Or the type of prepper would be a self-sufficient prepper, not one of those doomsday preppers. Anyhow, my dad tried to make the farm into more and more self-sufficient so that we grew all our own food. Never quite got there. The food we did grow, we ended up canning. And it was more of a treat than anything. We did have a lot of self-sufficient for meat. We grew pigs. That did kind of help out. That cut down our meat bill. But I'm the first to say that I do not like pork products. After growing up consuming a lot of pork, I'm one of the few people probably in the United States that's not a huge fan of bacon. Because I ate a lot of bacon, a lot of pork roasts, a lot of pork steaks, a lot of ground pork while growing up. But one thing that really got me, there were two books really growing up that kind of thrust me into the idea of being self-sufficient. One is this book here, John Seymour, The Guide to Self-Sufficiency. This is actually my dad's copy from the farm. You can see it is well beaten up, quite a relic. It is falling apart, rips right in half. Pages are falling apart. I'm sure there's lots of dirt ingrained in these pages. There's stains from slaughtering animals. Very interesting book. As a kid, I'd actually read over that book, look at it, scheme and plan and try some of the stuff in there. Of course, I failed multiple times because the book was kind of one of those just enough to be dangerous. Tell you just enough stuff to get you interested, to make you think, oh, I could do that. Then you go and try it and find out that inside those pages, they might have left some details out, might have been edited out for space and time, as they say. But it's a great idea that it presents of you being able to do for what you need for yourself, which that's the idea of self-sufficiency. I have since they have actually reprinted that book. This is actually my current copy I use. I just use this copy as kind of a reference or a conversation starter. Although my book is getting pretty beat up, you can see the binding is pretty well cracked. There's just as many stains in my book as there probably is in my dad's. Hopefully one day I can pass this book on to my children because they might be interested in self-sufficiency. As it kind of goes with many things in our lives, it's our parents who really push us forward into what we're interested in. We really get the interests of our parents. As I said, there's a second book that really kind of got me interested in self-sufficiency, but more the story behind it. It's the Foxfire book, the Foxfire series. This is book number 3, I do believe. This one's not listed, but this is number 3 in the series of the Foxfire books. Hog dressing, log cabin building, mountain crafts, food, planting by the signs, snake lore, hunter's tales, faith healing, moonshining, and plenty more. That one, where the guide to self-sufficiency is very much kind of the nuts and bolts, gives you some good starting points. The Foxfire has more of a storytelling. Well, it explains. It still has some explanation, a lot less pictures, a lot less diagrams to follow, and more personal accounts and personal stories. And that's really gotten my interest, especially as an adult and as I got older, is the stories of self-sufficiency. Spoiler alert, this modern world that we lived in, where the magic of the supermarket, you go to the supermarket, the shelves refill. You flick a light switch and the lights come on. The roads are plowed for you. Sewage is skirted away. You never have to deal with it. This is very much a new phenomenon. Something that we really, our ancestors never had. Some not even back a generation or two. Do we have to look far back before we find where individuals had to be self-sufficient? Really goes along with that, the Sisu talk I talked about in an earlier episode. Doing for yourself, strength. Your power goes out, you were the one to fix it. Your heater goes out, you had to find out how to heat your home. Because there really wasn't the infrastructure that we have today. And through that, if you study history, there's some amazing stories of individuals who persevered, who thrived even, because they did it for themselves. They grew their own food. They knew the value of land. They knew the value of hard work, the value of season changes. Some of the stories of mountain men who would go off into the mountains and only live off what they could trap or forage, taking maybe only the rudimentary supplies, flour, sourdough starter, maybe some dried meat, with them to kind of get them started, and then they were on their own. It really shows the human spirit when you start looking into these stories of self-sufficiency, of individuals who press on. Ingenuity in the fact that they would have to find solutions for problems that they couldn't foresee. Harsh winters, blight or crop die-off, predator attacks on their animals. It's a romantic idea, and I do understand that, even though my goal one day is to live on a self-sufficient homestead where we produce all our own food and heat and water and all that good stuff, electricity even. I do understand that's a romantic idea. One I'll probably never achieve. I've come to terms with that long, long ago. but it's still something to strive for, something to look at, a way to live. Like I said, I'm not a prepper as far as a doomsday prepper, but I look at more self-sufficiency. I look at, all right, do we have a second or third way to heat our house if the heat goes out and it doesn't come back on? Do we have backup food? Maybe it's not a end of the world scenario, but we get sick and we can't drive into town to go get food, or we don't. There's a snowstorm. We don't feel like driving in to pick up our weekly groceries. We've got enough food to last us a couple of weeks, maybe a few months if we stretched it and had to. Worst case scenario, could we go get our own food? Could we walk out into the woods and know how to harvest an animal? Or know what plant is safe to eat and which plant is not? That gives you a lot of freedom. Freedom is something on limited supply recently. It's something a lot of people fear. We understand that to have freedom, you have to assume risk. Having the freedom to go out and hunt my own food also means I have the risk of possibly starving to death. Because the time spent tramping around in the woods for food is time I could have spent at a job getting money to buy food. But out in the woods, I'm in control. I have my own freedom. Having the freedom to not be hooked up to the grid and have to pay for electricity has a lot of freedom. How much power do you want to produce? How do you want to produce it? Do you want to do solar? Do you want to do wind? Do you want to do hydro? Do you whatever it is? The downside is the risk is if your system fails, your electrical system fails, you're without power. No one's going to come in and save you. Up until recently, up until 2019, that type of talk was considered crazy. How could you not want to be a part of society with the safety nets, with the massive amounts of electrical lineman crews that can come restore power in a matter of a few days if they had to, or government assistance if you can't find food. The government will give you money to buy food or give you free food. How could you not want to be a part of that? Well, I saw back then that it did mean I gave up a lot of my freedoms, a lot of my choice. It made me nervous. Now, post-2020, we find ourselves in a different world. We've seen how easily it is for those safety nets to no longer be there. Governments no longer provide the stuff they promised they would. That was kind of the promise a lot of people. I'll give up my freedom if you promise me I can have that safety net. The magic of the supermarket disappeared in 2020. Ran out of bare necessities, bare essentials. Industry shut down. Manufacturing shut down. That's kind of in the last year where I've really looked at self-sufficiency in a different light. Again, not a doomsday prepper. I know this will pass. But I was thankful that I could provide. I had food to provide. I had heat to provide. When the store was out of essentials, I could make do with what I had. I have said it before, my family has really fared pretty good post the beer flu. I really do credit that to that self-sufficient idea. Yep, I have freedom when I engage in self-sufficiency. But again, there's a lot of risk to it. I don't prescribe to a lot of those ideas that I am going to wait for someone else to take care of me. I've already talked about the sisu that I really embrace, that strength, that going on against impossible odds. I still do believe that. I embrace it, but it really has given me that perspective that that's something we all should try to thrive for and chase for more, to be able to do for ourselves. That's the allure of self-sufficiency now. Now I feel like I am writing one of those stories that I hope 50 years or 100 years from now, someone will look back at these videos, even the journals that I've kept, stories I've wrote about kind of going against convention, and be inspired by them. That we don't need large government as much as we think we do. We don't need large corporations as much as we think we do. That's definitely not to say that every American needs to get their plot of land and try to be self-sufficient. We know that that can't sustain. That's not a sustainable model. I don't get into self-sufficiency because I believe it's some green method, or I can produce food better than the big factory farms. I know I can't. I know that that's not really possible. One, I don't believe being self-sufficient is green. I've been to enough self-sufficient farms that I believe are actually harming the environment while they're saying they're helping it. A lot of the practices I see are not good for the environment at all, especially when it comes to waste management. Growing organic means that a good portion of your crops are going to die. So if you look at organic farming per acre versus conventional farming per acre, conventional farming would produce way more food. So I don't think that it's better for the environment. Of course, I don't believe that people, again, if you had everyone in Detroit, a city of, I think, 3 million people, maybe it's 5 million people, if they all say, you know what, I'm going to go out and fish for my food, hunt for my food, and farm my own food, very, very quickly, that will go south. With the society that we have, the number of people we have, it just isn't attainable. But I believe we all should be self-sufficient to a degree. Be able to produce heat, have other ways to heat our homes, other ways to feed ourselves. So when these systems do fail, and they will, we're able to make do until things get back to normal, get back to where they were. And again, I'm not a doomsdayist. Stuff will return back to normalcy. This will all be a fun story we tell our grandchildren about how we survived 2020 and beyond. But I do hope that it pushes people towards that, being more independent. Even simple stuff, how to fix your own car, how to fix your own sink, how to make do, how to improvise to get through. That's what self-sufficiency is really about. Not quickly running for help and asking for help and depending on the system to provide for you. You can definitely live in the system, with the system, but outside of it at the same time. At the same time, you can have your ability to have food stores that you've grown yourself. Something always tastes better when it's homemade. Even if it's the most disgusting thing you've ever tasted, there's a sense you can actually taste the pride in it. You can taste the hard work, I'll tell people. When I talk to people about home brewing, I am the first person. If you give me a bottle of your home brew and you tell me to taste it, I have tasted legitimately very bad, very, very bad home brews that I wish would never see the light of day. But that's not how I critique it. That's someone who took time, used their own energy, their own resources, their own gumption to try and make something they could have easily went and bought. When I talked to an individual, a doctor friend of mine, I was talking about home brewing, and he kind of chuckled. He's like, why? Why don't you just go down to the store, buy yourself a six-pack of beer? True story. Easier, sometimes cheaper, depending on what I'm brewing up. As I tell people who get into brewing, never try to brew your own Riesling wine. That's a very specific type of grape, very hard to grow grape, actually. If you want to do that, go to the store, buy a delicious Riesling wine that you can get off the shelf, sometimes for as cheap as $7, $9 a bottle. Instead, brew stuff, berries, flowers, stuff that grows locally around you. Because again, it's unique, it's special, it's something you're doing for yourself. I admitted to him that yeah, I loved it. I still to this day I just bought some beer for this Sunday for me to drink. That is not homebrewed. So if you have me try your homebrew, I'll try it. I'll critique it. Guess what? I'll tell you it's delicious. I'll tell you did a good job. Why? Because I'm looking for that effort. That what did you put into it? The hours you spent cooking it. Even my simplest hard apple cider, which I did the video on, I can whip up one of those batches 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what's going on. Quite simply, quite easily, not a big deal. In that same time, I could easily have ran down to the store and purchased a consistent, very reliably tasting batch of hard apple cider. There's shelves of it at our local grocery store. But with that self-sufficiency, there's that pride in that you did it. You made it. This is your wares. And again, that, even the most disgusting, and I've made some bad brews, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a pro. I've made my share of wines and ciders that I'm pretty sure there's a good hint of vinegar in there. There's a good hint of a bit of sourness in there that means I didn't sterilize something quite right, or maybe I messed up a part of my process. But it's still, when I drink it, it's a lot of pride. I made this. Stuff you've canned. Homemade bread even. I'm the first person to say I despise a sandwich made with homemade bread. It just doesn't taste right. I like the taste and the feel of commercial bread. But I'll still enjoy it. I still will enjoy it. I'll revel in it. I'll ask for seconds. I'll even ask for thirds. Because it's that pride of you did it yourself. You made it yourself. Now, again, I don't believe that every single person in the world needs to go get a few acres of land and start farming and start being self-sufficient. One, that's not attainable. I could only imagine if the city of Detroit, if all, I think 3 or 5 million people live in that city, all ventured out and bought even an acre of land in Michigan and tried to make a self-sufficient farm on 1 acre. It'd be devastating to the environment, it'd be devastating to the population. More lives would be claimed from people trying to be self-sufficient and trying to feed themselves than any of the diseases we've seen rip through the history of the world, because it's just not sustainable. People who say that self-sufficiency, being green, will save the environment are full of it. The organic movement's one of them. Take an acre of land, if you grow organic versus commercial, over half of that acre will be spoiled. Where the commercial farm will produce much more sufficient, better quality, and more consistent food than any organic person ever will. But even someone who lives in a major metropolitan area can still be self-sufficient. They can learn how to do for themselves instead of asking others to do for them. Again, even stuff like making your own pizza dough. We make homemade pizza once a week. I will guarantee you, though, that my children prefer Domino's and Papa Murphy's. There's just something they put inside their their dough that I just can't match. And I'll be honest with that. Mine doesn't taste as good. But there's a pride. We did it ourselves. That's our pizza. We made that. If it failed, we learn a lesson from it. If it succeeds, it fills our stomachs because we did it. And that's the true takeaway about self-sufficiency. And again, I know it's romantic. I've talked about that already, that the idea of being self-sufficient is a very romantic idea because truly self-sufficient, I'm sure I'd probably, my family would be starving half the time, and a lot of us would be injured or sick because of the risks of being self-sufficient, growing your own and producing your own food and all that. But to a degree, being self-sufficient allows us to have pride in what we do. Have my kids build a shelf for their room. Yeah, it might be crooked, might have some nails poking out, the stain's not exactly true, the varnish is still a little tacky because we got it wet or something. But you have them look at that shelf and they'll say, hey, I made that. I did that. And that's what self-sufficiency is really about, knowing you could do it, you could make it. And that feeling is truly freeing, to know that you did something and you didn't need someone else's help. Again, that sisu coming through, that strength I can do for myself. You want to talk about a way to rid people of self-esteem issues, of worry and stress, a lot of the psychological conditions we have. I wish people would just be more self-sufficient. To be able to sit there and say, I can do that. I ground my own flour, my own wheat to make my own flour. Yeah, it's chunky. It's got some of the chaff in it. Chew carefully because it might cut up your gums a little bit when you eat the bread from it. But you did that. You made that. And that's something that we're losing sight of in the United States. That's something, even the world, we're really losing sight of doing for yourself and having pride in what you do. Anyone who gets into self-sufficiency will have a lot of pride. That maybe that pizza oven they made out back. It works. It's not great, but hey, I did it. I made that. My kids made a pizza oven. I will admit it was the biggest pain in the rump to make a pizza in that thing. The firing was a little inconsistent. We'd burn part and part would be raw. You definitely got a lot of the clay in your food. You got the ash in your food. But you know what? My kids had more fun and were more excited about what they were able to create and being able to see the process of doing each little individual piece. I would never trade that. I'd actually hope that my children persevere and pursue that a little bit more. Again, I don't want my children to grow up on farms and in the middle of nowhere. But I do want them to continue to be self-sufficient, to know they can do for themselves and don't have to rely on someone else. That's an amazing feeling, but again, that comes with its own risks. If you rely on yourself, that means if you fail, it's on you. It's not on someone else. You can't blame a government. You can't blame a politician. You can't blame a corporation. It means there's no safety net for you. But that's a true sense of freedom. And that's something I really wish everyone in the United States would grasp and have a feeling of. I don't think many people today know what true freedom is because they're scared of the risks and dangers that come along with freedom. So anyway, this video is getting a bit lengthy and I've had to reshoot it a few times here, but I'm proud of what I made. Yeah, it's not going to be the best video, a lot like my experimental series, and probably once I do drop experimental from this, there's going to be a lot of glitches and errors, but I made it. I didn't rely on someone else. I didn't send it to an editor. I didn't send it to a proofer. I didn't have a special effects guru do it. I did it from the ground up. And I'm grateful. I enjoy it. I like watching my videos. Granted, it's some of them are painful to watch, and they're going to continue to be painful to watch. But at least I can look back and say, you know what, I did that. That's mine. And that's an awesome feeling. I do hope that all of you will try that. Try something a little bit self-sufficient. Try canning your own food, making your own breads, brewing your own beer, building something instead of buying it. Will it be the same quality? No, probably not. But you'll enjoy it just that little bit because you know the hard work and effort you put into it. Again, if you want to ship some of your home brew, I will gladly drink it. And I'll tell you, this is delicious. Here's some pointers on how it could be better, but I can taste the hard work. I can taste the effort. I can taste how proud you are that you were able to do this. So anyway, I'll leave you with that passing thought here since my cigar is now almost completely gone here. And it's definitely getting cold in this garage, which is barely in the positive digits. I think we're up to positive 14, 15 out here in the garage. But anyhow, try being more self-sufficient. There's a lot of risks that come with it. There's a lot of dangers. But that feeling of freedom that you'll get is indescribable. So anyhow, I'll leave you here. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later.